share the general audience performance course. You got that? Welcome.
Good morning, everybody. I'm here today to play a few tunes for you on the banjo and also introduce you to old-time American music, which is not a style that is very popular today. Not a lot of people listen to it, but much popular music of today takes its root in American old-time music. I will tell you, old-time music is, we call it the music in the 1900s and through the 1800s is string band music played in southeastern United States, mostly by country folks. Popular instruments in this genre are the fiddle and the banjo and the guitar. And they would also have vocal, they would have lyrics, of course. And these musicians didn't read sheet music like symphonic musicians do. The way that they would learn tunes is by ear. They might hear a tune from their friend and pass it on. You could imagine it like the telephone game. If any of you have played this when you were a kid, you know it's when a group of people get around in a circle, one person comes up with a word or phrase, whispers it in the next person's ear, and that person whispers it in the next ear until it comes back to the first person. And oftentimes it's the first person hears something that's totally different from what they said originally, or it could be something with the same meaning but different words, or it could be something totally different because everybody who hears it might want to add something new, or maybe they didn't hear everything and they change it with their own unique style. And I'd just like to demonstrate to you today how this happens with old-time music, where people will hear a tune and it will turn into something completely different, or it'll have similarities. I'm going to show it to you with this tune called Cumberland Gap, which was a very popular tune back in the early 1900s and even still today among bluegrass players. I'll first start off by playing a verse for you, just so you can get the tune in your ear and have a point of reference. Lay down, boys, let's take a nap. There's gonna be trouble in the Cumberland Gap. Cumberland Gap, it ain't so far, just 4 miles from Middleburg. So, it's a very simple tune. The verses all have the same melody. Often there will be instrumental interludes. But these versions I'll play for you are all instrumental. There are no lyrics that I'm going to sing along with them. And just briefly before I start playing, I'd like to just introduce you to the banjo, which of course has come to have been associated with a very American instrument. But its origins are from African slaves who came to the Americas as early as the 1600s, 1700s. As in Africa, their instruments very similar to the banjo. They have a gourd body with a stick attached and strings, and they might strike it in the same way that banjos do nowadays. And this is the form that it eventually took. And the style that I'm going to play in is called clawhammer style, which is a very appropriate name, as I'll hold the shape of my hand up like a claw, and I'll strike the string down like this. So, clawhammer style. This is the style that old-time musicians would play in through the 1800s, through the early 1900s, up until the 1940s when the bluegrass style came about, in which the players would wear metal picks on their fingers, and the music got a lot faster, and the banjo would take the back seat. This first version I'm going to play for you is what I'll call the standard version, because phrases from this are heard in many various versions of the tune, so it's kind of a reference point. So that's our first version, and the second variant I'm going to play for you comes from a man named Marion Reese. He was a fiddle player in Boone, North Carolina, and this version is a transcription of his fiddle recording Library of Congress made of him in the 1930s or early 40s. And the version I just played for you would have been popular in his area. Banjo players and fiddle players would be familiar with it back then. So he's familiar with what I just played for you, but you'll hear that there are things that are very different about it in the lengths of phrases. But essentially it's got one part, two parts to it, like you heard in the first one. That could correlate as an instrumental breakdown. If there were lyrics, there would be two parts. One would be the verse and then a little bit of music in between. But anyways, here's Mary Reese's version. So you kind of hear hints of the original tune in there, but of course he's got a lot of unique flourishes. This last version I'm going to play for you is, if you'll excuse me, I'll have to tune the banjo a little bit. But this last one comes from Kyle Creed, who was a banjo and fiddle player from Surrey County, North Carolina. And he lived in a small unincorporated town called Round Peak. And the style of these musicians who played in the town has become so unique that people have given the name the Round Peak style to this community. And I guess I better turn this band on. We'll talk about how tuning's a little important, just seems a little cooler. Since often the banjo would play with the fiddle and would be an accompaniment to the fiddle while it plays the melody, And there are a few keys that are very popular with the fiddle, D, G, and A, mainly because they get to use a lot of open strings and play all in one position. So, but this one is in E major, which is, so it probably would not have been played with a fiddle. But anyways, it's a unique tuning. And you'll hear a few unique characteristics of this version. One is that there's no, round peak players does not often use brushing, which is when I brush my finger across all the strings. This wasn't popular in there. And also, you'll hear a thing called the Galax lick. Galax was a town in Virginia, and the banjo players there came up with these two pickup notes that have become characteristic part of their melodies. And just very generally, you'll hear there are very melodic shapes in this tune, and also fit these high note offbeats. That's also a defining characteristic of this style. Here's Kyle Creed's version of Cumberland Gap. So that one has a lot more similarities to the original tune than maybe the other two did. But anyways, that's the end of my presentation, and I hope you've got a little bit of a sense of how this music spreads, and we'll also just leave you with the thought that there's legacy from this music, that old-time music turned into what we would call folk music and country music, and country music turned into rock and roll, which turned into pop music, which has the sounds that we're very familiar with today. And music is still spread a lot like this, except from ear to ear. Except now we have resources like the internet to hear any of this music that we'd like to. Anyways, any questions?
If you were going to be giving this presentation for an audience, would you want to include a whole band to play along with you, or were you envisioning it just as yourself?
I was just envisioning a solo performance. Just focusing on the banjo.
Okay.